Alright, here's a look at what we'll be doing today. We'll be creating an NPC, talking to them, asking them to follow us, and then getting them to climb or traverse a block. And we will be using state trees to do that. So, if you want to learn about state trees, create an NPC, or have the NPC traverse a block, let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so first off, we are working inside the game animation sample that UE has offered to us for free. And I am working in 5.6. Ignore the name of the of my project. I promise you it's in 5.6. Okay, and so to get the state trees to work, first off, you need to go to edit and go to plugins and type in state tree, and you just want to make sure the gameplay state tree is marked to be active and state tree is active. If you need to restart, go ahead and do that. All right, so now we will go ahead and to our place actors, and we'll go down to volumes, and we will create nav mesh. We'll create a nav mesh volume, and this is the volume that your NPC will be able to walk on. And if you want to see it, when it's selected, you want to press the P button, and that will show the navigation area. Okay, so first, inside of our sandbox character, we're going to go ahead and create a Boolean variable, and we'll call it isNPC ? Now we can make it instance editable, so when it's on the map, if you add the characters to the map, you can check it there. And we don't, when we're the NPC, we don't need to set up camera, and we don't need to set up the input. So off of event possessed client, we just want to grab the isNPC variable we created just now, pull off of that, and get the not Boolean, and then throw that into the branch condition. And only if we're not the NPC, then we'll set up the camera. All right, so okay, so we're going to create the NPC. So to do that, let's right click the sandbox character and go to create child class, and let's rename that to sandbox character NPC. And inside of that, let's go to the event graph and go to the construction script, and let's just go ahead and set isNPC true there. And we want to do this in the construction script because this will happen before all of the other code in the sandbox character, because that all happens like on possession and things like that, and construction happens before all of them. Okay, so now we can throw our NPC into the level. And let's go to the character movement inside of the NPC, and we want to search for acceleration, and we want to use acceleration for paths. Okay, and so this will allow us to use the AI move to node. In my past videos, I didn't check this, and rather than using AI move to, we were using add movement node. But if you check this, use acceleration for paths, you will be able to use the AI move to node, and you won't have to use the add movement input. The AI move to node is a little bit more simplified and user-friendly. So we're going to go ahead and use this method going forward. What we want to do is we want to just test that this is working. And our target actor will be the player, and the pawn will be self. All right, so we need to make sure that we plug self, a reference to ourself, into the pawn, and we can create an acceptable radius about 150. So when they get to about 150 units within range, they'll stop. And if we get a player character, we can plug that into target actor. That will be the actor that we're moving to. And then off of success and off of fail, we can delay. So if it doesn't work, or if it's successful, in a couple seconds, we'll fire off the AI move to and continue to follow. All right. And this is just for a test. So if on fail, you would want to maybe fire it off quicker. So let's just go ahead and see if this works. Compile and save. And the NPC should run to the player. Okay. It does. So, and you see that he's not just sliding, and that is what the acceleration on paths does for us with the AI node. So, Why did I use the NPC? Why did I create a child class of the sandbox character to create the NPC? That is because if I were to duplicate the sandbox character, which I have done in previous videos, you have to create a separate animation blueprint for that character, since the animation blueprint specifically calls for the sandbox character. Okay, so if you duplicate it rather than create a child class, you're going to need a different animation blueprint, or you have to go into the animation blueprint, the sandbox character, and then check to see if it's the sandbox character, and if it's not, then if it's valid, and if it's not valid, then check for the NPC. You could go that route, but then you run into problems where the chooser is specifically looking for the sandbox character. Okay, so you can go into your chooser then and add NPC maybe, but I have tried that. It doesn't work. That it doesn't look for it. It still says it's looking for the sandbox character. Okay, so you could duplicate the chooser. Have one chooser for the sandbox character, one chooser for the NPC. I've tried that, and that gets a little messy as well. So this is the cleanest way I found it to work. Now, what you could think about doing is you there are a lot of inputs inside of the sandbox character, like the movement input, jumping, things like that. You could think about creating a child class of the sandbox character, call it player, which we will do in this video. What I don't do is I don't move all the inputs over to that player character. So you could think about doing that. To me, this is the cleanest way of doing it. You create it, you have the sandbox character, you have the animation blueprint that's working, that works with that sandbox character, and then you can create an NPC, because the NPC is not going to use those inputs anyways. What you're going to want to do is you're not going to want to put anything in the sandbox character base class that's going to override what your NPC is doing, and we'll see that later in here as well. I will create the player, and then we'll put some inputs only in that character, only in that class, so that it won't affect the NPC going forward, and that will make more sense as we go on. Okay, so we want to create a interface that will allow us to interact with NPCs without casting to them. Casting will load a character even if they're not in the map, and so interfaces are a good way to get around that. So let's go ahead and open that up. Create a function, and we'll call it interact, and we're going to create an output, and we're going to have it be just a normal actor. It's not that we will not use it in this video. If you create an output in a blueprint interface, by default, when you access it inside of your actor or character, it will create a function inside of that. So rather than just putting it in, if you didn't have it output and you clicked on the function, it would just add it to the event graph. Whereas if you have an output, it creates a function for it. So we will see that later on in the video as well. And so I want to call this interacting actor, and we might use it in future videos, but we will not use it in this one. But it will serve its purpose by creating a function that we can access. So we want to go to our base class, and we want to go to class settings, our base sandbox character class, and we want to go down to implemented interfaces, and we want to just add the one we just created. Okay. And so now we will be able to access that in our NPC child class. So let's go ahead and create a player. So same thing, we'll right click sandbox character, create a child class, and we'll go ahead and name that player. And by default, that will have that interface that we just implemented to the base class. All right, so we want to go to our world settings. It should be pinned for you, and we want to find the game mode override, and we're just going to change the default pawn class. We're going to change that to be the player we just created. All right, and let's go ahead and test it, make sure that works. All right, we can run independently. The NPC is not being affected by what we're doing, so that's great. Other than following us by where we go to. So now we want to create an interact input. All right, and let's go do that. But actually, Unreal has already created an interact input for us in this sandbox character, in this sandbox project. They aren't using it yet. If we crack open the IMC sandbox, go ahead and double click on that and open it up. You can go down to interact, IA interact, and you can see that it's if you hit E, it will interact, or the top face button top, which would be like triangle or something. And if we search for interact inside the base sandbox character, we will see that it's not being used. So it's nice of them to have it in there. It looks like they have some plans for future updates, which will be sweet. I'm looking forward to see what that will be. But for now, we will just create our own interact node. So we will in our sandbox player that we just created, we will search for that IA interact that they have created for us, and we can just test that it works. Off of started, we can search for a print string node, and this is to test that A, that it works, and B, that it really isn't being used anywhere else, and I just didn't find it by the search. All right, so we'll see, does E do anything else? No, it just says hello. All right, so it's not doing anything else. Good. So now let's go ahead and do a sphere trace by channel. So when we hit E, we're going to search in front of us. That's what we're going to do. So to do that, we want to first get our actor location to know where we're at. That will be our start. And we will drag from started to sphere trace. Now I do started rather than triggered, because triggered is auto rapid fire. As long as you have your finger down on that button, it's going to be trying to fire off. So I do started because it's kind of just a one-off. Triggered is a little bit faster, but I like started for things like this. Triggered is better for things probably like movement input or access inputs. No. Anyways. So now how do we get what's in front of us? Well, we get actor forward vector. Get actor forward vector. The target is ourself, this blueprint, this character. And off of the return value, we want to multiply, and we want to right click the bottom pin, and we want to change that to a float single precision. Okay, so converting that lower pin to a float and multiplying it by 150, it's going to give you 150 units in front of your actor. All right, so to get that location, we need to first take our get actor location and add to that, and we want to add the forward vector times 150. We want to add that result to our actor location and plug that into the end pin, because that will give us 150 units in front of our actor location. Okay, and for testing purposes, for the draw debug type, we can put for duration. And let's go ahead and test this. So it is going in front of us, but the thing is it's working based off of where the camera is looking, if you see this. So it's getting the camera forward vector. And I'm not 100% sure why. I think it has to do with the way they programmed the mesh and everything. Because even if you go off a mesh, it's not going to grab the mesh's forward vector either. So what we want to do is we want to use the mesh's sockets to determine where we're looking. And the easiest way for me to do that is to add an arrow to the mesh and then place that on a socket. Okay? So we want to find the mesh, and we want to click add, and we want to find an arrow. And we're not using the arrow they added to this because that's edited in C++ and we have no access to it. So we're just go ahead and use this arrow here that we just created, and we want to make sure it's going to be visible for testing purposes right now, and we don't want it to be hidden just yet for testing purposes. And so now we want to attach that to, well, first off, we want to change the rotation to 90 so it's facing the correct way. And then we're attaching it to a socket so that we'll be basing the world location based off on where that socket is rather than where the camera is looking at. Okay, so because right now it's using the forward vector, it's going based off of the camera and the camera manager. All right, so to get around that, we're using the arrow and its forward vector and the world location that it's located on, which will be the socket. The only problem with that is putting that on the spine creates an issue where it follows the spine. So if you're leaning forward, it's going to go into the ground. So we don't want that. So let's go ahead and change it to the root, actually. And then, but what we want to move up the location up then on the z-axis 100 units up or so, so that it's not on the ground. You know, if we're trying to talk to an NPC, we want it to, most of the times they're not on the ground. All right, so now instead of using ourselves as a reference, we will just go ahead and drag out the arrow that we just created, get that, and we will get its world location instead. So off of arrow, get world location, throw that into the start, and then plug that into the top node for that in that addition node. When you have arrow 1 selected, you can hit Control D and click, and it will add a duplicated node, or you can just copy and paste, or you can just drag it out yourself. But from that, we want to get forward vector and clean that up a little bit, but everything else is the same. All right, we just switched out get actor location with get world location, and we got the arrows forward vector, and you can see it's. So now let's go ahead and make sure we change that arrow back to hidden in game. And now we want to see how when we were testing it, it wasn't changing to green when it interacted with the NPC, and that's because it checks for visibility. The sphere traced by channel, we were searching on the channel of visibility, right? So we want to make sure that that is not being ignored. We want to change that from ignore to block, and we want to do that on the base sandbox character so that it will do it for our NPC and our. Right, so we go ahead and do that, compile and save. Now when we interact with them, it will be green. It will actually hit. Okay, so from out hit, drag that out and look for break, and break that, and then expand that so you can see hit actor. All right, and now from our hit actor, we want to call the interact. We want to call the interface we just created, the interact function inside of that interface. So the hit actor, if it has this interface, it will run that function. Okay, so if we go down to interfaces, we can see interact, and we can double click on that inside of our NPC character. We can go to interfaces and click on that, and we can print string to see if it's working. All right, and we can get a reference to self and throw that into the interacting actor return node. We're not going to use that, but that is what we would do in future videos if we're wanting to know the actor that we're interacting with. Anyways, just go ahead and print string, and we'll see if it works. Okay, so it is now being blocked because we changed the channel to be on visibility. We changed that from ignore to block. So now that is working. And now we went inside of our NPC character. We accessed the interface that we created earlier, and he's talking to us now. And we're not doing any casting. Okay, and the reason we wouldn't want to cast in this scenario is because say you, rather than using the interface, and you wanted to cast to that Sandbox NPC, okay? anytime that you interact with something that wasn't that NPC, it's going to load all that NPC data, right? So if, say, you walked up to a tree and you did the interface and you hit E, it would load the NPC data even though you're not even interacting with them, just to check to see NPC, and we don't want to do that. And that's essentially what people say when they say worry. Don't they say worry about casting? Like, don't cast. It's in situations where the asset isn't loaded, and in this scenario, we don't know what we're hitting E and what we're interacting with yet. So there's no reason to load an NPC when we don't even know if it's on the map, right? So in another scenario where it's okay to cast is, say we have our say we have our player character, right? And we're all, if we're playing the game, we're loaded, right? It's always going to be loaded. So you, on an NPC, like for the example in the NPC, you could cast to the sandbox character, and that's okay because the sandbox character is always loaded because you're the player, right? So it's not going to need to load it a second time if it's already loaded. So, and we will work with that later on in the video where we will be casting and it'll be just fine. Okay, so now instead of using the print string hello, let's just make it a little bit nicer. Let's create a widget to where we can talk to the guy. We can just say, hey, follow me, or hey, never mind. All right, so let's go ahead and down to user interface. And let's create a widget blueprint, and a user widget is just fine. Let's go ahead and name it W_follow me. W for widget, follow me, because hey, follow me. All right, so let's go ahead and add an overlay. Drag that down and place it over the W follow me. The reason I'm using a overlay instead of a canvas panel is because the overlay will cover any kind of screen that you're working with. The canvas panel, you have to add the units, like 1920 by 1080, and you know, some people have different size screens nowadays, and I don't know, the conversion, the overlay is a little bit cleaner in some scenarios, and that's why I use that. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a vertical box to this. We're gonna add, and we're just go ahead and drag that over the overlay to make it a child of the overlay. And then for vertical alignment, we want to bottom align it, and then we want to fill horizontally. Okay, and now we want to grab a button and move it to the vertical box and throw those in there to make them children of the vertical box. When I opened this widget, it was on the library, and that's why those tiles were so large. If you switch it over to palette, it'll be a little bit easier to look at. Okay, so we want to drag those buttons. We want to place them inside the vertical box, and we also need to make sure they are variables. They might be variables by default. We go ahead and rename them to dialog option 1, button 2. We want to change to dialog option 2. All right, so now we can go ahead and get some text. We want to add some text to these buttons. Drag the text to each button that we created. Now we don't really need these to be variable. This was a little bit of a mistake here, but we can go ahead and rename them, at least so we know what we're dealing with. So we can name the option 1 text option 1 text, and option 2 text option 2 text. That way in the event graph we know which thing we're going to be editing. All right, so, and let's change the backing of the dialog option button so we can see the text a little bit better. So we go to background color and go to A, and we can just lower that a little bit. And then we can hit shift right click and then shift left click to paste. So shift right click to copy, shift left click to paste. All right, so let's go ahead and drag our option text out. And from that option 1 text, we want to drag out of that and look for set text. And connect that to the event construct. So this will be, as the widget is being created, this will be happening. All right, and from the in-text, we want to drag off that and promote that to a variable. These are the variables that we need. And we want to make that instance editable and expose it on spawn because we want to add the dialogue from the NPC character when we create the widget. All right, so we're going to do the same thing with the option 2 text. Drag off of that, set text, connect it to the other one, and then drag off of in text, promote it to a variable, and name it option 2 text. And make that instance editable and expose that on spawn as well. Compile and save. So back in our sandbox character NPC, in our interact function, we want to create widget. And from that class, or select class, we want to choose the widget we just created, W follow me. All right, so see, those are the text options we made exposed on spawn. All right, that's what allows us to do this here. We exposed it on spawn, on creation. So we can add our text right here from the NPC. From the return value, we add to viewport. And then we throw it into the return node. All right, so let's see if this works. Well, maybe not yet. Let's go ahead and get player controller. So back inside of the widget, we want to, when this widget is open, we want to set input mode to UI only. So we get our player controller and we drag off of that and search for that. We don't need to put a widget in focus, that's fine. We can set from the player controller, we search for show mouse cursor, and we want to set that to be true. We want to see our mouse cursor. And then on dialog option 1, we want to, on the button variable, we want to, instead, this is probably why you don't want to have those option 2 the actual text as variables, because it makes it confusing when you're looking at that the blue icon. Anyways, so for each button, you want to click that. And then so for on dialog option 2, if we hit never mind, we just want to remove from parent, and then we want to remove the mouse cursor, and we want to set input mode back to game only. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that stuff. We have our controller, we have our show mouse cursor, set that to false. From our player controller, we want to set input to game only. And let's go ahead and delete this right here. And then reconnect everything. Okay. And so when we hit never mind, it'll close the widget and put our input back to the game and remove the mouse cursor. Okay. And we actually want to do that on the top option as well, because when we hit follow me, we want the widget to close at that point. So, rather than copying and pasting, you could do a function, since these things do the exact same thing. That's a good time to create a function, but copying and pasting is just so fast. All right, so this, see, it's working. All right, follow me, it closes. Never mind, it closes. Okay, so now what? Let's create another variable and call it widget owning actor. We will make this an actor type. For creating this actor, we want to also make this instance editable and expose this on spawn. We're creating this because we want to call a function using this actor. Like, we're going to use this to follow the player. If you're not seeing the widget owning actor pin on the create widget inside of this function, just make sure to right click it and select refresh nodes to get that to appear. So back in our NPC interact function, we want to get a reference to ourselves and plug that into the widget owning actor. And then in our BP interact interface, we want to create another function and call it follow player. And then as the input, we will have it be the player. Okay, so we have our widget owning actor. We get that. That's the widget that's the actor that created this widget. And then we're going to have that actor run the follow player function from the interface. Okay, so that's why we did that here. Okay, in our NPC, we can go to interfaces and double click on follow player to create that custom event inside of our event graph. We want to go back into that function and we want to add an input. So you can see here, because we don't have an output, it creates a function or event on the event graph, right? So that's the difference. When you have it, when you don't have an output, that's what we'll do. AI, this is inside the NPC event graph again. All right, so let's go ahead and just to do the AI move to node again. And so our target actor is our player, so we can drag that off. We want to acceptable radius of 100. And then we want to delay, again for a second or so on fail and success. You want to make sure that you plug your reference to self inside of that pawn. All right. But we need to go to our widget real quick. And we need to plug in the player. So we'll go back to follow me. And you see where it now has an input for a player. If it doesn't, you can right click it and hit refresh nodes. But we want to get a reference to our player character and plug that into that there. Otherwise, in our NPC, it will have no data. It won't pull anything. And again, yeah, we need to get our reference to self and plug that in there. Okay, so now it's taking what we plugged into the widget, the player we plugged in there, and then now it's taking that information and putting it to the NPC. So now it knows to follow the player, right? So that's working. So now we want to create a state tree. Let's do it in the state tree rather than inside of the NPC event graph. All right, so let's create a folder for their state tree, and let's go to artificial intelligence and select state tree, and we want the state tree component. State tree component schema, but is also the state tree components. This one it's the top one, or you can go down and look. That's from the documentation. Read the documentation for state trees is actually really helpful. So we can name this st underscore for sandbox underscore NPC. Okay, so we want to go to our NPC and we want to add state tree. So look for search for state tree and add that, and then select the state tree we just added, and down by AI where it says state tree, add the state tree we just created. And compile and save it. All right, and so we want to create a new variable, and it will be a Boolean, and we will just ask if it's following. Are we following? We'll name it following. And this will be, we're going to use this in the state tree for a bool comparison. All right, so rather than, we can create a category for it if we want. We call it state tree. And rather than do the AI move to code, we will just set it following to be true, we will recreate this code in a task inside of this state tree. So we can just move that away, and event follow player, we can set that to true. For now, just to test. We will add to this code later. So inside of the state tree, under schema on the left, down their asset details, we want to change the context actor to be the NPC that is using this state tree. It will make it a lot easier for when we're trying to access variables. We will have basically all access to the variables inside of this NPC when we change that context actor to be that. Okay, so now let's add a state off of root, and this will just be an idle state that basically will have no code. This is like when the NPC is doing nothing. Okay, so we want to add state. We can name that to idle, and basically what we want to do is we want to create a transition from idle to follow player. All right, and we will do that for now. We'll do that on event tick, and for a condition we will do a boolean compare, a bool compare, and we want to go down to where it has left in, where it says boolean. We want to click on that drop down and go up to actor and choose the following variable we created. And then if you invert it, it will say not actor following, which is we could use, or we could use right, which I will check right, and if actor is following is true, then we will transition to following. So add another state off of root and name that follow player. And on that transition we just created, we want to change root to transition to follow player instead of to root. Okay, so if following is true, then we will follow the player. We will change from idle to follow player. Okay, so what we want to do is we need a task to follow the player in the follow player state. So we want to create a new task and name it STT follow player. Right, and we can open that up straight away, and we want to go to function override and choose enter state, and this we need that, otherwise it's not going to do anything. So when we enter the state, we will move to. So let's create a variable, because we need to be able to plug into that pawn, and we cannot plug that in with just a normal actor object reference. We need an actual pawn, not just an actor. So first off, what I want to do is, for future reference, I want to go back to this interface and change follow player to follow actor. In this video we will not follow another actor, but if you were to want to do that, this would make it more reusable for other functions. But for now, we want to refresh the nodes or delete the ones that we have in there. Delete this event follow player. Now it's no longer an interface. So we want to get the new one we just created or updated. Drag that in, double click on it or drag it in. And then from actor to follow, we want to promote that to a variable as well, because that will be the actor. We will access this data inside the state tree. We will be able to get that actor to follow. So now we need to go back into this task, and from st actor we want to cast to NPC. Right, to our Sandbox NPC, and then that can go into the pawn. And we can also from that grab the target, the actor to follow. We can grab that and plug that into the target actor. All right, for now it's going to be the player, but if you wanted to be more reusable, actor to follow would probably be a better name for it. So plug the NPC into the pawn. Do the same thing with the delay. So if he catches up to him and wait for a second, and then go forward with the code. You can do that with fail as well. Clean this up a little bit. We want to change the acceptable radius to something bigger than 5, otherwise he's going to walk all over us. So and real quick, we want to go back to the widget, and we want to make sure we update this follow actor inside of the widget as well. We want to refresh that. And just for now, we're going to use the player character. We're going to plug that in there. Even though, so we didn't really need to change the name and everything, but just for future videos and stuff like that, I'd like it to be follow actor rather than follow player, because we could create other widgets and other scenarios where we use that same function in different ways. Like we could call that function in a different widget where we're like telling the NPC to follow someone else or something. Like I don't know when you would have that scenario really, where there would be there are games where you could have NPC follow someone else, and then like you're off to the side doing other things. So that's kind of the idea. But this widget that we're working with is very specific to, hey, I'm the player, I'm talking to this NPC, so you follow me. So that's why we don't really need to change it like I just did, but that's, sorry to waste your time if you think that's a waste of time. Okay, so real quick, now that we have that task, we want to add that task to follow player back inside of our state tree. And now when we click on idle, I want to add another I want to add a debug task, a debug text task. And for the text, we'll just put idle state or something like that. That way we can see if we're moving away from this state to follow player, if that's working correctly. And then for this follow player, you're going to see that we have no access to that actor yet. So right now, the way it is, because we're not getting any information from the state tree, this cast will fail, right? It doesn't know what this ST actor is, and this cast will fail. So we need to change the ST actor to be instance editable, so we can click on that eyelash or go on to the details and select instance editable, and that will allow us to see it inside of the state tree we created. Okay, so now how you see there's an eyedropper, and there's a whole list of things that we can do with the ST actor inside of that task now. So we can go to the drop down. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to, it is pretty cool. You can see all this here. I'm going to go to, nope, we don't want actor to follow. We want ourself. We want this actor that owns this state tree, okay? So that we can successfully cast to the NPC. All right, so we see idle state is in currently. And follow me. See, it's working. And we are no longer in the idle state. You see, the idle state text defaults to 000 position in the map. If he's following too closely, I never change the acceptable radius, so change that back. So you see idle state there. It's in idle state. Follow me. Okay. Not sure if I'm going to turn the screen around here. Anyways. He's not in the idle state anymore. He's following me, obviously, so he's not doing the debug task. All right, so we can change this to be on fail. We can do that like less than a second. Because if it's failing, we want it to try to follow quicker if it's failing for whatever reason. And we can clean this up a little bit. Okay. So that's a mistake. I don't know if you catch it real quick. I hit E, but my character kept running. Right? So it pulled up the widget, but it didn't stop my character. So we need to fix that. And I'm going to do it just inside the widget. There are probably better ways, maybe more efficient ways to do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to cast to our sandbox character, our player. Well, just the sandbox character because it's just our base. But we cast to sandbox character from get player character. That way, it's casting to the correct sandbox character. And from as CB sandbox character, we want to stop movement immediately. That will stop our movement. And that's what I was saying before is it's okay to cast to our sandbox character because our sandbox character is already in the level. He's the one that started this whole thing off. So casting the sandbox character in this instance is not going to add any data to. It's not going to create a performance hit, right? And also, you say, well, when we cast a sandbox character into this widget, it makes this widget inside of the, when you audit your assets or you look at the size map, it's going to show this widget as being 4 gigs. Okay, that's package it and see if the thing is 16 gigs. It's not going to be. All right, so I know that's the worry. It's like, oh, well, we cast to something that's a small file and the size maps, it's going to be 4 gigs just for that widget. If all you have is, it's not going to do that. If you package the project, it's not going to be 4 gigs for the widget, 4 gigs for the NPC that's following, 4 gigs for the level block that's casting to the sandbox character. It's not going to create that issue. Sometimes the size map, I don't want to say it's wrong. It's just it gives you a misleading information, based on when you actually package your project. Okay, so now we want to disable input inside of that sandbox character. We don't want to be able to jump. We don't want to be able to move, right? So what we want to do is we want it to disable input. So the target is not the controller. The target is the actor that we want to disable the input on, right? So we don't want to be able to input with this sandbox character, so that's the target. And then our player controller is our player controller, right? So we'll still be able to, like, if you had inputs inside the level, you would still be able to use those. For example, this, if you had inside of your sandbox character and you had the input to call up your pause menu inside of your sandbox character, this will make that so that will not work. All right, so you need to think about where you're putting your pause menu and things like that if you're going to be disabling input on your sandbox character. If you still want to be able to pause when you're in a dialogue like this, you would want to give the ability to pull up the pause menu from this widget, which is an option, or you could have the ability to do it in the game mode or in the controller itself. So there are other options to where you could pull the pause menu from. Okay, so that's just something to think about. If you do have that set up in your character, this will prevent you from pulling up that pause menu. And please excuse my frame rate in this. I pulled up the stat FPS, which you can do by entering that command, stat FPS. I had 2 instances of this project open, but I didn't realize it. So I was like, what is causing my FPS to tank? And just, food for thought, if you have the same project open twice, that could hit your FPS. Okay, so we want to copy most of this and we want to undo it when the widget closes, right? So we're not going to have to undo the stop movement immediately, right? Because that's already, there's nothing that says begin movement immediately. We don't want to do that anyways, right? We just want to enable the input, right? So again, we want to change the target to be the sandbox character and the player controller to connect to the player controller. And this will now re-enable input inside of that sandbox character. And we're casting from our player character, and that's why it's going to be grabbing the correct sandbox character, right? So, like, if I just had a random actor going into that object, it might find the NPC instead, right? But because we're dragging from the player character and casting from that object, that's why it's successful in finding the player character. All right, so just something to think about. If I just plugged a random actor into that, let's say if I grabbed the widget owning actor and I plugged it into that object, it's going to be grabbing the NPC's information. Okay, so just something to think about. So now we want to get him to stop following us if we talk to him again, right? Stop following me. So how do we do that? Let's go back to our interact function inside of our NPC character. And let's drag off of following. And let's promote the option 1 text. Let's promote that to a variable. I'm not going to do option 2 text because never mind, I think works in both cases. If you talk to him while he's following you, you say, never mind, you can keep following me. Anyways, so following, we want to get a branch. Well, actually, we want to get a not Boolean. So from following, we want to not bool. Right. So if we're not following, we want to go forward with the normal code, which will be follow me. And if we are following, then we want it to say, stop following me. So we want to set our option 1 text that we just created the variable for. We want to set that text off of true to be follow me, because following, we are not following. So if we're not following, we want it to say follow me. It is kind of hard to wrap your brain around the not Boolean sometimes. Like it takes time to just work with it, but it starts to make sense. So if we are following, we want the option text to say stop following me. All right, and then we want to. You see how that option text is just being filtered or connected right to the option text node. So whatever this is being set to, that option 1 text is going to be, and then it's going to display that inside of the widget. Okay. So compile and save that. And now we want to go to the follow actor function / event, custom event, right? And we want to, are we following? We want to do the same thing. We want to get the not Boolean. You see, I am still programmed to just go right into, even I still need to break that habit of going right into the branch. So it's not following. So if we're not following, plug that into the condition. If that is true, then we will set following to be true. So we want to reconnect these things the correct way. Right? So if we're not following, set following to true, and then set the actor that we want to follow. And clean it up a little bit. And if it's false, then we will set following to false. Right? And then we will set the actor to follow to nothing. All right? So we can copy and paste, or duplicate, or drag out and hit set, whatever you'd like to do. Just make sure it's not following. And then our actor to follow, we can drag that out, and then plug nothing into that. So it'll just be nothing, don't follow anything. Okay, so See if it works. Follow me. And talk to him. Stop following me. What? Where are you going? Alright, so what do? We never added the transition back to idle if we're not following. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to create a transition off the follow player state inside of the state tree we created. And we will do it on tick. And we will transition to idle. And we will do the same condition. Not the same condition, but we will do it a Boolean compare condition. And we will choose off the Boolean, off of the actor, and we'll grab following again. And if actor following, if that's false, then we will go back to idle. Okay? So let's test it out again. Follow me. Stop following me. All right. Okay. So we can add that idle text. I removed it for whatever reason off a video. Put it back. Just for, clarity's sake. We're in the idle state now. Follow me. We're not in the idle state anymore. Stop following me. We're now back in the idle state. Okay. So, now, let's go ahead and mess with the navigation. Let's go ahead and make it bigger. Because we want him to follow us over blocks and things, right? Or if we're climbing stairs, we want him to follow us. So we want to go to our recast of our nav mesh. Once we resize it and get it to the size we want to go to the recast. We want to search for link. Because now we want to generate nav links automatically. All right. And thank you to MacXIke for making me aware of this automatic navigation link generation. He asked for it, so I looked into it. So here you go. Maybe you're watching this video right now. Thank you. If not, other people have benefited from your suggestion, me included. Okay, but it looks like it didn't do anything. Why can't I see the nav links? Well, because the navigation box isn't big enough, and we'll go ahead and fix the scale on that. First off, though, you see how there's so much area around the blocks? When the NPC is traversing blocks, there is a possibility that they will land in that area, that little buffer zone in between the block and the navigation volume. All right, so if you want to make that area a little bit smaller, you want to go down to the agent radius, your agent radius, and I'm going to change it to something like 15, and you can see how that just shrunk that area. Okay, so, but we're still not seeing that auto generation nav link, right? So let's go ahead and first off, let's create a big platform, because the navigation system, the way it works right now is they want to walk around things, so it's kind of hard to show that they want that the traversing is working if they can just walk around the area. So first off, you see this nav volume, how it was like in the ground? That's why the nav generation link wasn't working, right? So you want to scale that up to be the correct size. And you see how the automatic nav link just automatically generated, which is really cool to see. Okay, so we want our guy to traverse. We want our NPC to traverse. So we need to create a custom event inside of the Sandbox character-based character, right? And we can call it NPC jump custom event or something like that. And we want it to go into the bottom one. Why? Because the top one jumps at the end. And we're not trying to jump. We're trying to traverse something. So we are going to go to the bottom one that only tries the traversal action. Okay, so we don't want to jump. We want to traverse. Maybe you want to jump. I don't know. I don't want to jump. So what do? First off, we want to go into the level block traversable, and I want to create a interface for this block. And it's not using any interfaces right now. I just want to create a blueprint interface and call it something like BPI traverse level block or traverse block. And I'm not going to add any functions to it. I'm not going to do anything with it just now. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create it, and I'm going to add it. I'm going to implement this interface to the level block traversable. All right, level block traversable. It's important. It's that one. I mean, you could put it in the level block since the traversable is a child of it, but I'm just going straight to the level block traversable. Okay, and the reason we're doing that is if we go back inside to our task, our STT follow player, we want to create an event tick. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a sphere trace, much like our player when we're interacting with the NPC, is we're going to do a sphere trace, and we're going to look for an actor that implements the interface traverse level block. And the reason I'm doing that is because for whatever reason I could not get it to work another way. When I pulled off the hit actor and checked if it was a level block, for whatever reason that would not come back as true. I don't know why. Anyways, so that's why I'm doing it this way. That's why I'm just checking if the thing implements the interface, and if it does, we will go forward with code. And let's go ahead and do that code right now. Let's drag the ST actor into the graph, and we want to cast to our NPC character, which is fine. It's fine to cast to our NPC because this state tree is literally on the NPC, so this can only exist if he's in the map. So casting to it's not going to add any more, it's not going to hit your performance. Okay, it's not going to load an asset that's not there. Okay, so we want to sphere trace by channel, and we want to get the actor location off of the CPV Sandbox character NPC, and we want to plug that into the start, and then we want to get actor forward vector. So we can drag from that and get actor forward vector. And from that we want to multiply. So we want to go into the Sandbox character base, and we want to click on get traversal check inputs, because you see it's tracing 75 feet in front of it, or 75 units. So that's what we want to do here. So we want to right click that bottom node again, or pin, and change that to 75 to be in line with what the traversal check is checking for. It checks 75 units in front of it, so we want to do the same thing here. We want to add that to our actor location like our player does for when we're talking to the NPC. We want to create the radius about 20. And for jaw debug type, we will go ahead and do it for duration, just for testing purposes, for debug purposes. All right, so from out hit, we want to break that. And we only want to go forward with this if we hit something. So we hit something. If true, we will go forward. In the hit actor, we want to drag from that, and we want to check does implement interface BPI level traverse block. All right. So if it, and we want to drag from that return value, and we want to check for that branch, and if true, if it implements that interface, then we are going to use that NPC jump custom event that we created. That's going to try a traversal action. Okay. And so that's another reason why we're not wanting to cast to this. So we're using an interface instead of casting to the level block to check if that's the actor being hit, right? Because we don't want level block assets being loaded while we're checking to see if we're interacting with a level block, right? Because we might not be interacting with a level block, there's no reason to have it loaded. And so that is why we're using an interface instead of casting. So I hope you're starting to understand why we use interfaces in some instances and why it's okay to cast in some instances, okay? Let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. A clean code is happy code. And you can unsubscribe for me for saying that if you want. A clean code is happy code. I don't know. Don't. I don't like things like that. Yeah. So that's the code. Cleaned up. Let's check if it works. All right. So he's interacting with me. He's not trying to jump. Right. So let's see. He traversed. Right? Very cool. This time he just wants to walk around it, right? So that's why I created, like, say you had like a stair system or you had a whole another level. This is much easier to see that it's working, right? He will traverse it. And then using the automatic generated things, he will walk off of it. And he will walk back onto it, right? And he will walk off of it. Very cool. You can ask him to stop following you if you want. Hey, stop following me, bro. Right. But that's not a cool ending shot. We want a shot of him on the block. That's the whole point of the video. So let's get up, ready. All right. So talk to him one last time. Stop following me. Let's get that good finishing shot here. There we are. Okay, so first we want to make sure we change all those debugs off to none. So change all your debug things back to none if you don't want to see those green and red spheres. I hope you learned something. Sorry that it took me so long to put up another video. And I also apologize that a lot of this video is kind of going over stuff I've already done. But we are 2 versions removed from when I did that, so I want to show that it's kind of a lot of the same idea. I wanted to show some things that I've learned as far as, acceleration paths, using that instead of movement input. Automatic link generation is a good addition. State trees are a good way to start working. It's a good idea to start learning about state trees because that's the future. They're trying to move off of behavior trees and going into state trees. Like the new Witcher game, for example, is heavily utilizing these state trees. So I believe that in the future I will make more state tree videos. I'm going to start trying to release kind of weekly videos. I enrolled in I'm enrolled in college. I'm doing a computer science degree with a focus on game development. So in some of those classes we'll have Unreal Engine. We'll actually be working in Unreal Engine in some of those classes. So I hope to, when I take those classes, to kind of share some of that knowledge with you as well. So stay tuned. My next video will probably be about, people have been asking about swimming. How do I combine this GASP character with just like with a swimming animation? So I think I'm going to be working on that next. All right, so stay tuned for a week or 2 for my next video. I know you might not believe it because it's been so long since I uploaded my last one, but it is something I'm going to be working on getting better at, releasing videos in a timely manner. So if you're here, thank you, and I had a good time working on this video, so I hope you learned something. Take care.